Welcome to Cali High episode 67, Catching Up with Armen of LA Cannabis. I'm your host, Chenzo Nico, and this week we check back in with Armen Paronyan, CEO of LA Cannabis, to talk about the legal state of cannabis in California. Armen is a board member of the United Cannabis Business Association here in Southern California, and we discuss his dealings with state legislators regarding issues of cannabis tax, regulation, and licensing. We find out about various bills proposed to make cannabis laws less onerous and more fair, and discover where the industry is currently, where it's headed, as well as the future of cannabis nationally. He explains why LA Cannabis has recently made the switch to organic soil in 5-gallon grow bags after using Rockwell cubes for over a decade in a hydroponic setting. Armen also tells us about the new strains he has and the lower prices favoring consumers. Stay tuned for a talk with one of the most knowledgeable people in cannabis today. Hi folks, it's Chenzo here from Cali High, and I'm sitting here today with Armen Paronyan of LA Cannabis. How are you, Armen?
Very well, Vincent. Thank you for having me on again.
It's good to see you. I think this is like our fourth interview.
This is the fourth one.
Yeah.
I must be a fan favorite.
Yep, you are a fan favorite and one of the most knowledgeable people in the cannabis business today, I would have to say.
Thank you.
Speaking of the cannabis business, let's just get an overview. How is the state of the cannabis business, the legal cannabis business today?
Yeah. Well, right now, cannabis is definitely going through turmoil. There is a large price compression that's happening in the industry. So for consumers, it's obviously a good thing because the price of legal cannabis is coming down. Unfortunately, given the taxes, it still has a lot of room to go because the government's taken a good chunk of that. But the price per gram is down substantially. So consumers are able to purchase legal tested product at about the price of the illicit market. So industry-wise, a lot of turmoil because the operators and the business operators have to adapt, pivot, look internally, and kind of reevaluate their business and their company and try to see where they fit in today's market as far as the price point and how that compares to their operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I have friends that are going out and getting eighths for 25, and they're calling me up. Hey.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah. So, well, that's good for, like I said, like you say, the consumer, right? So here we are in California, and I thought to myself, you're LA Cannabis. Well, how does LA compare to something like another city, another municipality like San Francisco? Yeah,
so different markets. LA, obviously the county is a lot bigger. So our market is bigger compared to the San Francisco market. San Francisco was earlier to license dispensaries. So they're on additional rounds of licensing. I think they have oversaturated their market a little bit. They have a lot more delivery licenses. The tax rates are different as well. So we differ in taxes. LA has some of the highest taxes in the state. But, it's a different market in the sense that the city's laid out different. Right, so you can't have an area with too many dispensaries and an area with not a lot of dispensaries. This is what's happening in San Francisco. LA did one thing correct, is they went by community plan area, and the community plan determines the density of the area. So they based how many licenses are allowed in an area based off of the density. Right,
population density.
Right, yeah. So some areas of the valley are a lot less dense than areas in Hollywood or downtown LA, East LA or South LA have more dense pockets. So they've opened more licenses in those areas. And I think San Francisco went off of a cap, or they went off of zoning. So a bunch of them have been bundled into one area. And then they have these pockets where there's not too many dispensaries.
Right. And how does California compare to other states?
California is a free market, is what they call it. The state does not have a limit on how many licenses can be issued versus some states who are they call limited licenses. So the state has said, okay, 20 licenses, 10 licenses. For example, Florida, they only have 13 licenses in the whole state. So it's a
What?
very limited license. A lot of the bigger multi-state operators control those licenses. It's more of a monopoly or limited license, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
It's not a free market because
Limited opportunity.
Right, right. So limited opportunity. Here, it's considered a free market. The state does not have a cap on the licenses, long as the local authorizes it. And then we have plenty of municipalities here that have no cap on the local licenses as well.
Right.
City of LA has a soft limit, and then they also have a limit on the cannabis, the cultivation canopy. So there's some restrictions here, but a lot more free market than some states that have very restricted licensing limits.
Interesting. And what does a dispensary in LA pay as far as taxes go?
So City of LA is one of the highest taxed municipalities in the state. Recently, last year, they removed the cultivation tax, which was a back-end tax that the consumers did not get to see because it was baked into the price. We had Assembly Bill 195. I think that's the number of the bill. What that did was it eliminated the cultivation tax and it moved the tax to the retail point. So now it moved the excise tax, which was also baked into the wholesale price, and now they made it based off of the whole retail ticket price. So it turned a complicated tax system into a more complicated tax system. But the legislators thought it was a tax relief for the industry, but ultimately ended up increasing the taxes by a couple of percent. Because what it did was the law was vague on clarifying local versus state tax and how that was going to be taxed. Because when you have a excise tax that's baked into the cost of the good, and when a local charges a tax, they get to charge that tax on tax. But now the state went and turned the tax into like a use tax that gets taxed at the end. And now we have a conflict with local and state saying, oh, well, I'm the last taxed. And then the state saying I'm the last taxed, the local saying they're the last taxed. So there's a conflict. And now operators are left with trying to figure out who to pay the tax to. It created a lot of conflict. But with that said, when you aggregate the taxes and you stack them on one another, the way the state has taken that position that you have to stack the taxes on one another.
So they're additive.
It's a tax on tax on tax.
Right.
So $100 product, well, first you need to charge the local tax, which is $10 in City of LA would be 10%. Then you would tax the 15% excise on the 110, and then you would charge the 9.5% sales tax on the total with the local and the excise included. So it's a tax on tax on tax, and it ultimately increased the price of the product, and it turned a $100 item that you would pay before you would pay a 20, let's say it was a 20, if a $100 item was a $50 wholesale, the tax would be around $13. Now it's going to be about $15. And then if you take the aggregated additional taxes, you're looking at a few more dollars for the consumer at the end. So on top of being a really high tax compared to other states, we went ahead and made it more complicated than it needs to be, really.
Yeah. And I know LA Cannabis grows its own cannabis, which is top-notch, folks. So how did getting rid of the cultivation tax affect you?
So obviously...
And you have your retails,
No, it definitely, for cultivators, getting rid of the cultivation tax was a good relief. The industry needed it. The cultivation tax was based off of weight, which no other industry gets taxed that way per se. And the price of cannabis started plummeting. So if you look at some of the greenhouse product, it's wholesaling around $350, $250 in some times of the season. And if the tax, I think, is $160 a pound, so you have a $250 pound being taxed $160.
Right.
It didn't make sense, right?
Right.
So I think that was an easy sell to legislators, like, hey, we can't be taxing cannabis by the pound because the price fluctuates.
Right. They didn't take into account the fluctuation.
Absolutely. So they went ahead and made that correction. So that was a nice relief. But then they kind of took it and flipped it to the retail side with the excise change. So the bill kind of actually complicated the taxes. So it didn't really, I don't think it necessarily helped with relief for the overall industry. And I don't think the consumers got to see the benefits of the tax reduction. I think it's
So-
other things that are driving the price down, not necessarily the tax fix.
Only the legal cultivators that have no other business benefited mainly? Or is that what you're saying?
Right. But then it didn't necessarily improve their business as well,
Right.
Because if the price was already coming down, I don't think that was there to it could. I'll rephrase that. Some cultivators might have seen some relief. The greenhouse outdoor cultivators
Right.
saw relief.
Right. And we were talking about, what is it, Senate Bill 512?
Right.
Can
So
you tell us about that and what's up with it?
Yeah, Senate Bill 512. So just a little background. I'm on a state legislative committee myself, so I'm very involved in what goes on in cannabis bills in Sacramento. I'm a part of the United Cannabis Business Association.
Right.
I'm on the executive board there, and I sit on the legislative committee. So I'm constantly digesting bills and how it affects cultivators and retailers, because I'm involved in both spaces, and a lot of my friends in the industry have asked me to be involved in a lot of this stuff. So I'm very involved in Senate Bill 512. Senator Bradford is championing that bill for the industry. What it is it's a fix to AB 195, which is the bill that got rid of the cultivation tax. So it is going to fix the tax on tax. It's not going to allow locals and states to stack the taxes. Right, and it's going to address some of the penalty issues, because cannabis tax, most taxes, well, not most, all taxes in California that are paid to CDTFA, if you're late a day or you miss a payment, it's a 10% penalty. Cannabis is a 50% penalty, which is insane.
50%.
Right? So let's say you make an error, your accountant drops the ball, doesn't file the taxes on the 31st like they're supposed to, boom, 50% penalty, which is just not.
Is there any other industry where that type of penalty?
Absolutely not.
No.
No other industry would put up with that, right?
Uh-huh.
The cannabis industry is abused in Sacramento. They are not as organized. They're not as well funded as some other industries that have consolidated, that have all the resources needed to make sure their industry is not choked out of the state. But cannabis is not there yet. This is why I kind of volunteer a lot of my time and get involved in these things. But SB 512 is not going to fix the industry. It's going to fix some of the problems that were caused by another bill. So it's definitely an important fix. It'll save the consumers on $100. It can save them anywhere $4 to $6 depending on the municipality. So it's going to fix a lot of that. AB 195 actually didn't specify, but was not clear in defining delivery fees. So what CDTFA did was assume that delivery fees are now included in the total receipt. So they're actually taxing excise on delivery fees now. And the CDTFA has put out guidelines saying that you have to tax excise on delivery fees. That's another thing that was a problem that was created by AB 195, which SB 512 fixes. So actually delivery customers will be saving a lot more if this bill actually makes it through and gets on the Senate floor. So it's actually in it's in the Tax and Finance Committee right now, if I have the committee right. So it's got another hurdle to go through, and then it'll be on the Senate floor for a vote. it's already made it through the Senate, so it's in assembly right now. So it needs to check some of the boxes there, and hopefully it'll be a fix for some of the problems the industry is dealing with right now.
Interesting. And what are the chances of it passing, do you think?
Well, it passed Senate committees, so
Yeah.
we were very excited about that. It has some hurdles right now because it's in the tax committee. It's in. The opponents of the bill are arguing that the intent of the Prop 64 was to put the sales tax on top of all the taxes, but that's kind of not the true story behind this bill. This bill fixes a lot of other things, and Senator Bradford, who's championing the bill, has offered to make changes to some of the opponents' arguments, but the opponents are not willing to budge. They want the bill to die. So we're kind of, there's that fight happening. I actually was emailing senators yesterday. As soon as I leave from here, I'm going to make a few phone calls as well, because there is a chance the bill gets heard on Monday, because, things in Sacramento are really last minute. Things will pop up, and next thing you know, your bill's being heard in 24, 48 hours, and you got to
get ready. Yeah.
Have all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you think cannabis needs a larger unity as far as the legal business and the lobbying situation?
Absolutely, yes. Well, the industry is divided in some way because we have the cultivators, we have the distributors, and we have the retailers. So I think there are areas where there's different interest.
Right.
So that divide is there. There are areas where we have the same interest and the industry can come together, but it's really capital, right? Mm-hmm. You need the money to organize. Mm-hmm. You need the money for the professionals. You need the money for the attorneys to review these bills. You need the money for people to be on the ground in Sacramento monitoring these things. So it's all, it takes bodies and it takes effort, and it all costs money, right?
Yeah. You showed me an excise tax little diagram. Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain that, or?
Yeah, I think you posted about it.
I did.
Cal Normal actually did a nice study, and they compared all the different taxes for other industries, and beer is taxed at a different rate, which is some of the lowest rates because it's a lower priced item. Then it's wine, and then it's hard liquor, and then it's tobacco. I think we're like 100 times more than beer. Right, it was about 20 times more than wine, 15 times more than alcohol, and like 10 times more than tobacco.
Yeah.
Right, so the industry
cigarette gets
is
14 cents.
And a half a gram joint.
Half a gram joint, $1.10.
$1.10. So you're paying about 10 times more tax on a half a gram joint than you are on a cigarette in California.
Wow. And is there any way to change that?
Well, that's what the industry is trying to push for now. Obviously, consumers have a say. I think people really underestimate the power they have as a constituent. And they think, they can't make an effect. But if there's an issue that is affecting you and you call your senators, they are obligated to take your call. They are obligated to respond to your emails. That's what they are. They are here to serve the public. And I think people underestimate the power that they have sometimes. And I can tell you from experience, senators and politicians, they have a lot going on, right? You're just one issue. So if they can tackle an issue and not have a bunch of complaints from constituents, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And if it makes sense, they're going to do it. So I think the consumers are another piece of this, right? It's like if you're a consumer, the average smoker is probably spending $1,500 to $2,000 a year on cannabis. 40% of that is going to the state, right?
Right.
$800 of your money that's going to be back in your pocket. It's not going to go back to the retailer because that money never hits our books. Right. Well, when we report our taxes to the IRS, that money is not our money. It never hits our books. So if a company says they did $1 million in revenue, really they brought in 1.4, and 400,000 of that went to the state of California and the city that they're operating in. So it's really, it's not our money, it's their money that's going to the state. So they have every right to voice their concern.
Is there any other product that consumers buy that's taxed so high?
No, well, you saw the breakdown. There is
for the
no other
excise.
consumer product
Just kind of ridiculous.
being taxed at that rate.
So here's another little government bit of bureaucracy. The metric system. I know growers have to use the metric system, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could explain this tracking program, and wondering if you have alternate ideas or proposals that might lessen the onerous burden of the metric system.
Scrap it. No. Well, look, it's something that the industry has taken on. It's required by the federal government for states to track the cannabis from plant to end product. So it's here. It's not going anywhere for a while. Some other states have taken other approaches, which I think is more industry friendly. The California bill or law, Prop 64, requires that the RFID tags are state issued. Some states.
RFID?
Yes, those are the. Am I saying it wrong? That's
No,
that's the way they're tagged.
Is that what it is?
So it's a tag.
Yeah.
It has a scanner in it.
Yeah.
Very expensive because we have
Each
to.
plant has a tag with a
Each plant
scanner
has a tag.
in it?
Right. It's got a strip in it. It's a ID scanner. It's got a little strip in it so that when the state comes in, they can scan and see how many of those are in the room.
What you're saying.
Right. So they're used in all type of industries. We have to purchase them from Metric, and it's baked into our licensing cost. If I tell you what we pay for licensing, people are astonished. Where our company's paying closely up to, it's about $200,000 a year for licensing fees, because most of that money is going into these RFID tags. The tags are very expensive.
Is that a city license or state?
State licensing
State
fees.
license.
So for cultivation and retail and all sorts of
Right.
different license types that we have. So we have to purchase these tags from Metric. Metric bills the state, and the state bills us. There are other states that allow cultivators to purchase their own RFID tags. So they buy them directly from manufacturers, and they're substantially cheaper. So that's one thing I think the industry is pushing for, that, hey, can we fix this, that we don't have to buy these tags from Metric and find cheaper alternatives? Obviously, Metric doesn't like that idea, and I don't know if the state, I see the state's point, right? They want to be in control of the situation better, but I don't think it's financially feasible to sustain this many tags that we're paying for, because it's tens of thousands of tags that are adding up. The larger cultivator, it's hundreds of thousands of tags. So we have the economics behind it. We have the environmental side of it. It's plastic that we're wasting.
Each one is plastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's full of plastic, and it's a thick plastic. So there's that side of it. There's the cost side of it. There's the actual labor behind tagging all these plants, where I think there's simpler ways to track how many plants are in a room digitally, and not necessarily have to have this physical tag that most people are like, I think there's better ways to do this. And I don't want to knock what the state has built, because at the time, at the speed and the way the program has been rolled out, it was what was in front of them, and they made the decision that they had to make. But I think now is the time, I think with enough years under our belt, just like all the cannabis businesses have to look internally and reconfigure their business, I think the state has to do the same, right? Mm-hmm. We've been at this for 5 years already. We have a lot of data. We know what's working. We have to know what's not working, and we have to make those changes. So can there be a lot of changes to the metric system? Absolutely.
Metric is a company, right?
Metric is a third-party company.
And they have the software. Is that what it is?
They have the software. They have the contract with the state.
Right. So why should they also have the plastic business?
Yeah, so it's purchased through them. I've heard some studies where it's about 10, or I've heard some operators say that it's about 10 times the cost of what you would be able to buy it on the free market for.
The tags.
The tags,
Yeah.
correct. And the big portion of the licensing fees go to the tags.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's
ridiculous.
That's an issue that I think the industry wants to tackle here pretty soon. And if enough people get together, and it's really the state, because they are a vendor to the state.
Right.
They're not our vendor. They are a vendor to the state. I think the state has to really reevaluate that contract with Metric and how we can save some costs for the operators and save some costs for the industry as a whole.
And maybe change it from plastic to biodegradable paper, maybe?
Right. Or one tag per room, one tag per tray, lower that footprint. Right. The number is the number.
Yeah.
Right. When the state walks in and you have 200 plants registered in a room, and it's not that difficult to count 200 plants. Or if there's 1,000, I can see the thought process behind it. Maybe you're going to a 2-acre farm that has 10,000 plants, and you don't want regulators in there counting 10,000 plants. But there has to be a better alternative to maybe counting the rows or counting one tag and like having that tag represent a certain amount of plants, right?
Right.
There has to be a better solution. I think the industry can come up with. There's AI, there's all type of different technology that can be looked at that's going to save the industry money and not be such a environmental waste as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you said you're on the United Cannabis Business Association's board. What is the United Cannabis Business Association up to lately, and what are the long-term and short-term goals?
Well, we have been together as a group, as a trade association for 7 years now. So we've done a lot. I think for the budget that we have, the group is putting in a lot of, the executive board puts in a lot of their time.
Is this mainly LA based?
No, it's statewide.
Oh, it is?
Yes, we have a coalition between Long Beach Dispensary, Santa Ana, the Coachella Valley, and San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So we all have different members from all those local organizations that participate in the state legislative committee. So it started off as a local LA-based organization that put together and organized retailers to get the Measure M passed, which is the law that started the licensing process for cannabis retail in the city of Los Angeles for adult use.
Right.
And then we've kind of just expanded into the state. And, we are, I will go out on the limb and say, the leading cannabis trade association in California. And I would argue that with any other association. And we've done a lot of work in Sacramento. Our executive director, Jonathan Ketchkov, I want to say his last name right, is doing an incredible job. Our president, Jared Kylo, does an incredible job in Sacramento. The whole executive team, the legislative committee puts in a lot of work. We have the Coachella Valley Association that's a part of it as well. Jocelyn, she does great work. She's from San Francisco, so she helps out a lot with. Everyone puts in a little bit of work, and it's all volunteer work. So no one's getting paid. It's just industry folks putting in the work, getting in front of these legislators to better the industry, right? That desperately needs regulatory watering down, if that's a word.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The regulations need to be watered down substantially, and we need some fixes so that this industry can get out of this hole it's in right now. And, I think I sent you the article about all the taxes that have not been paid. There's about $500 million in unpaid taxes. The industry is, the business operators are collapsing.
Yeah.
The consumer side, thriving. Consumers are going to get the best of the best product. They're not going to get better product than in California, anywhere else in the world. I've said this previously, and I'll say it again. You are not going to get a better product anywhere in the world than California as a consumer. Business side, businesses are collapsing, and the small businesses are getting the worst end of the stick. Small cultivators are getting the worst end of the stick. Small retailers are getting the worst end of the stick. So we need a lot of fixes, and someone has to do it. And for me, I made the decision to do it because I enjoy the industry, and I'm going to keep doing it until I don't enjoy it anymore. So
Yeah.
that's my side of it.
And do you guys collaborate with other business associations, cannabis business associations?
Right. So all the other cities that I told you about, they all have their local associations. So it's the Coachella Valley Cannabis Network Alliance. There's the Long Beach Cannabis Business Association.
Yeah.
There's the San Francisco. There's the Santa Ana, and they all participate. But UCBA kind of leads the way because we have the experience in Sacramento.
Yeah. I think I interviewed the Long Beach Cannabis Business Association guy. Can't remember his name right now.
I think Adam.
Adam.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's part of the legislative committee as well.
Yeah, that's cool. We were talking about Assembly Bill 1111.
Yes.
And what that was to
another bill
establish
in Sacramento.
Farmers markets for cannabis.
Yes.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this bill is back again. I think the author has made 3 attempts in the last 5 years, and I, as a retailer, we have a problem with the bill because it's very vague on a lot of the language as far as local control goes and how these events are going to be coordinated, licensed, tracked, monitored. And as a retailer, we think it's a little unfair for cultivators to be allowed to come into municipalities without a clear definition of how they're going to be licensed and authorized to have an event 32 times a year per license type. So
really,
if you take 32 events per license type, the average cultivator probably has 2 or 3 licenses on their premise. Some have 1, but some have 2, 3. And some bigger producers have multiple. So that part of the bill obviously needs some fixes. I don't think the retailers or UCBA or myself are against the farmers market concept. It's really the language behind the bill and how the bill is going to actually be implemented or enforced. Because we have laws on the books now that are absolutely not being enforced. So another law on the bill that's not going to enforce or be overseen, and then what does that mean for the Department of Cannabis Control? How are they going to oversee these events? So there's definitely a lot of issues with the bill, and the authors do not want to amend the bill. So we have no choice but to oppose the bill, and we've been fighting very hard against it.
Who are the authors?
So it's probably a group of cultivators. A lot of people are not very transparent in Sacramento. UCBA always puts their name behind whatever bill they're supporting or opposing. I don't have the senator's name off the top of my head. I don't have the assemblyman's name off the top of my head, but it's cultivators, whether it's large cultivators or small. I'd want to bet it's large cultivators, and I want to bet it's event companies, right?
Yeah.
They want to be able to host these events and not be in the cannabis industry, but not go through the compliance and the regulatory process that the cannabis industry has to go to.
Yeah.
So for us, that's an unfair advantage. I have to go through regulatory processes to retail in the city of Los Angeles, and now cultivators are going to be allowed to partner with event companies to host farmers markets, sell direct to consumers.
In any municipality and from any place in the state?
So that's the vagueness of the bill, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the face of the bill, it says that locals have control. So local authorities have control over events already on the books, right? But if you're in the event industry, you know that process very well.
Yeah.
It's not very difficult to throw an event in Los Angeles or in most counties or most cities. How that affects cannabis regulatory, it's very vague again, right? Like we have to have cameras, we have the track and trace system. What it's ultimately doing is allowing cultivators to be part-time retailers, which is not the intent of the law. We created a system with cultivators, distributors, and retailers for a reason. That's what the voters voted for. Why? Because it creates checks and balances. Now, can a person dabble into all sides of the industry? Absolutely. It allows for that. But you have to go through the regulatory process, not this bill that's going to create this pop-up scenario in an industry that's already struggling with the illicit market thriving. And we felt like there isn't enough language in the bill for the regulatory people or for regulators to have a clear path to regulating these events.
Farmers markets, yeah.
And the second argument is there's events like that happening right now. The law allows for it. It just has to go through retailers because they're the only one allowed to sell to end consumers. That's the intent of the law. So for cultivators to say, oh, we don't have access to customers, we're the retailers are the gatekeepers, is not true. Events happen now. There was an event in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, ZA Olympics. Consumers were there, retailers were there, brands were there. The track and trace has to go through a retailer so that the state has a way of tracking this product, right? So the arguments for the bill are just not true, at least in our opinion.
Right.
So we'll keep fighting the bill, and we'll see how that lands.
To make it more friendly for small-time farmers.
Absolutely, right.
And
if
keep
that's the intent,
abuse out of it, of the further
right?
larger.
It's really it's clarification. It's not an opposing the bill, but it's the argument for the bill is kind of fishy, right? Kind of like the Trojan horse. What's really behind this bill, right? Are we going to be having these mass ticketed events that these Live Nations and these big event companies are going to just capitalize on, and the farmer is going to just be there, pay to be there, and give away cannabis or whatever the arrangement is, right? I don't think the bill is not clear enough, and the authors are not willing to clarify their position. So the UCBA and a lot of the retailers have taken an opposing position on the bill.
Yeah. Well, I don't see why it has to be an event. I mean, regular farmers markets are on the streets, right? On a Sunday afternoon or whatever.
Right, and obviously cannabis can't be on the streets. There is camera requirements. So
Really?
It has to, right, so it has to be. So we're required to keep 90 days records of all the transactions. So when we submit for our license, all the premise diagrams identify all the cameras, and we go through a high level of scrutiny, and that's the vagueness in this bill. So how is an event going to hold 90 days records of cameras? How are they going to, there's nothing in the bill about any of this accountability that the retailers have to go through.
Yeah. Well, I hope we get that straightened out.
Are you going to call your local assemblyman to oppose the bill?
Absolutely. So I know you grow your own weed, but what do you look for in other growers to get their weed on your shelves?
Well, it's quality. I think that's what we hold ourselves true to, and that's what our customers know us for. That's why we have customers that have been coming to our stores for over 10 years, 12 years, some of our customers.
Yeah.
We have customers that are here almost every day because they know if the product's on our shelf, we stand behind the quality.
Right.
And we're not just going to bring any product that paid us for a slotting fee or gave us some special to put on the shelves. The quality matters. And then as far as the brands go, when the quality's there, we also look for brand support, right? What are they going to do to drive some of their existing customers? Because we're going to advertise them to our customers. So there's got to be some give and take, right? They have to help sell their product as well, and then let their customers know about their product being available in our stores. So it's definitely a business relationship when we carry a brand. But if the quality's not there, I'm sorry, whatever they're offering, it just ends up not cutting it, because the consumer doesn't necessarily know the brand, but they know our brand, right? Because they drive by it every day.
Yep.
It's on their way to work. It's around the corner from their house. It's on their Weed Maps feed. We're in their face, and we're the point of contact, right? We're where the transaction happened. So if a product is bad or they have a bad experience, they're not going to go to the brand. They don't know where to find the brand. They know where to find us.
Right.
So as a retailer, we just can't have that as the experience for our customers, because we highly value our customer. We highly value the lifespan of our customer.
Right.
Because acquiring customer is expensive. So we invest in keeping the customer. And that's kind of our goal. So I get pitched brands all the times, even friends, like I have to just play it off and be like, yeah, let me get a sample. We'll put it in front of the buyer. But the product just does not meet the standard.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they can't be on the shelves if it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know for all your customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of innovations is LA Cannabis going to be making lately?
So we're constantly looking at ways to reinvent ourselves, business-wise, making a lot of pivots and changes on the business economics of things, figuring out how we're going to play in this new climate, or as far as products, the price per gram, and how that affects our cash flow. So the business side, I'm constantly working on ways to figure out how to adapt to the market situation, because the bigger market I can't control.
Right.
So I have to be able to control my economics and how that works into the business. But products-wise, we are constantly looking for different strains to cultivate, but we are making a big transition in cultivation right now. We've been growing in Rockwell for 15 years, and we finally made the decision to transition to soil. So that is a big change for us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are going to make a change into the way our plant is grown, the size of the plant.
It'll be bigger with soil, right?
So we are.
What size bags are you going to use?
We're going to be growing in 5 gallon.
5 gallons.
So that is big change from where we're at.
Uh-huh.
The labor side of it changes a little bit. It's a lot more labor to go in, but a little bit less labor throughout the process as far as the watering goes. So we're making those changes now. We actually have about 30% of the rooms transitioned, and as they come down, we're making the change. So there has to be some changes made to the room's environment.
Right.
So we're redesigning our trays, we're redesigning our irrigation system to fit this new change.
And will the soil be like living soil and with like?
Right. So it is we're working with Mother's Finest soil.
Uh-huh.
It is one of the top quality soils on the market.
Organic?
It is organic soil,
Uh-huh.
yes. And so managing the soil,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot of soil, and we're in an urban environment, right? So working with the suppliers, securing that, and having the soil delivered, so it's not sitting around. So it's a lot. It's different planning. Mm-hmm. So we're making those changes. I'm already loving when I walk into the rooms. The plants are just happier.
You already have soil going on?
Yes. So we have 30% of the rooms have already been transitioned.
Oh, wow.
So no,
I think we'll have to come down and do a little episode down there.
I'm gonna take some videos and I'll post it and I'll tag you. So you'll be able to repost on your page. But we have plants and veg in soil already. We have rooms that have already flipped to flower in soil.
Uh-huh.
I think our first room's in week 1 right now in soil.
Oh, wow.
So it's definitely a different feel in the room. You can just feel, it feels different, right? The humidity is a little different. The temperatures are a little different.
Yeah.
The height of the plant is completely different.
Going to be taller.
It's going to be about 2 feet taller.
And wider.
And wider, correct. So a lot of changes on that side. So I'm hoping.
How much yield difference will there be per plant, do you think?
We're anticipating a 30% to 40% increase.
Yeah.
We've kept all our genetics, so we'll continue to have our bank of genetics that we're cultivating and hopefully expand into that kind of library of strains. We have a lot of the classic stuff, so we're very excited to see how our existing strains are going to come out in the soil, because it is going to be different, right? It's like our customers are going to see the similarities, but they're also going to notice the differences, right?
Yeah.
So it's.
I think it might have a more full flavor profile.
Yes, and I think the flavor is going to be better. The bud structure is going to be better. The yields are going to be better, which is good for the economics for our business and the lifespan of the company.
Yeah.
Right now, with the
yeah.
price compression, we need to have bigger yields, and the process is a little longer. So the economics is different, right? Because when you're going hydro, you go faster.
Yeah.
So you're going faster. So making the plants a little taller takes a little bit more time, but we're adding veg space. So we're going to substitute that time with more space. So we'll be able to stagger things out and not miss a harvest.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're just replanning everything. So we're planning for the better.
That's cool. And you talked about new lights?
Yeah. Yeah. So
You used to use Govita, right?
So we've transitioned into the Govita LEDs for the last year and a half, 2 years, I think, where we've been on it. But we were HPS in veg, and now we're doing LED in veg as well.
Yeah.
So we're doing LED in veg. We'll be able to lower the lights a lot more. We have more veg space now. We're maximizing our trays. Before we had some dead space because of the type of trays we were using. So now we're putting in custom trays to maximize every foot and still have the clearance needed for the fire department.
Yeah.
So making a lot of changes, working a lot of hours. I told my wife and my family, I'm like, for the next 90 days, dad is not dad. Husband is not going to be husband, right? We're going to be a little preoccupied with another family we have, our family of plants.
Well, if you need help, let me know.
I will.
Speaking of genetics, let's talk about your genetics. I know you have a lot of legacy strains, and a lot of them. I know you just came up with the new Bubba, the diagonal Bubba. I don't know why it's called diagonal, but the Bubba is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's a Bubba crossed with the OG, so it's similar to our LA Con, but different. Like we still have the LA Con, we have the genetics. It's not in production right now, so we kind of phase it in and out depending on the demand. But we have the Bubba diagonal. We have a Biscotti mince, which is like a Kush mince kind of hybrid. Amazing. Came
Can't
out
wait to try
amazing.
that one.
Yeah, it sold out really fast. We had done one row. I think it was a small batch under around 10 pounds and flew off the shelf. But we got that in rotation. We're bringing sour diesel back. I have a sour coming back.
Really?
We had sour in production for a minute. So we have a lot of the OG strands. We have the real sour diesel. And it is a difficult plant to cultivate. The yields are not that great. That's why the industry doesn't produce it.
Right.
And you're not going to see it on shelves. Obviously,
It's a growing period is longer as well, is it?
It could go a little longer. Sativas actually don't go. Let me rephrase that. Sativas don't go as long, but the plant is really tall. So it's hard to grow with other strains.
Right.
Because they just overpower the room. So when you're growing a lot of strains in a room, it does an injustice to your other strains. It kind of dominates it. So we figured out a way to kind of maintain that a little bit. So we have one coming down now. That's still in the grow dance. So we plan on bringing that back in the soil as well. We have the original OGs. We have the Louis, the Fire OG, which is like comes from the Louis strain,
right?
And
which I crossed
think we have
with
about
some landrace Afghani to come up with my Formaggio Azzurro.
Yeah, I remember
which
that.
we're going to smoke right after this.
Yes, I will be. I saved myself for it.
Yeah, you'll be interested in that.
But we're definitely going to. We're keeping a library of strains where the industry right now is pivoting towards the candy strains, which it is the hype now, and we're growing a lemon cherry gelato as well, right? Because it is a popular strain now. Consumers want it, so
yeah,
we're
you have a gelato also. You have a runts.
We have a gelato, we have a runts, but this one is a specific lemon cherry gelato. You know, we're always trading strains with friends, and it's kind of. There's a few we won't trade, but most we're open to trading with most of our friends.
I need a few more clones.
Yeah. I've made a few exceptions with you, and I've given you a few of the genetics on the limited list.
And I thank you. You mentioned the possibility of growing from seed, or is that true?
Well, some of our genetics are from seed. Right, so we'll come across the seed, and then we'll take clones from the seeds, right?
Through those,
exactly, right. So the library of strains have been accumulated throughout the years from seeds, different clones from different friends in the industry, and then it's interesting because you can take the same strain from the same mom and grow it in different environments, and it's gonna come out different, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, your environment does determine who you are, right?
Yeah.
So that's the same for the plants. Your environment is who you are.
Right.
It's a byproduct of your environment. So it's interesting to see the same strain from your friend or someone else that was grown, and you've seen the end product, and then you see it grown in your facility, and the end product is completely different. And we actually have 2 cultivation facilities, and we see a difference from facility to facility in the same strain.
Right.
We see a difference from room to room with the same strain, right? Just the measurements of some ways the rooms were laid out because of just the physical space.
Yeah. Airflow and whatnot, right? Humidity, or
it could be a couple of feet of difference. It could be the way it's the environment, right?
Yeah.
It's the environment you created. So it makes a difference on how the plant is grown, or the end product.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Where do you see the cannabis industry in 5 years?
Whew, look out that far, man. What is that? The industry in 5 years.
Or where would you like it to be, and where do you think it's going?
The industry as a whole, it's got one direction, up. It has a lot of growth that is still needed. We are an infant, right?
Yeah.
As far as size and innovation, there's still a lot to go. Have we accelerated a lot? Yes. The cultivation, extraction, manufacturing of cannabis had a big infusion of capital, and it accelerated very fast. It definitely has a lot more to go, and I think as agriculture is expanding and technology and agriculture are coming together and incredible things are happening, the same is expected in cannabis. As far as the business side of it, there'll be more price compression to come. There'll be...
And what do you mean by price compression?
The price of the cannabis is going to come down, right? The price per gram will be cheaper. Cannabis will be commoditized. Infused products will absolutely... The crude oil will be commoditized because alcohol is alcohol, right? It's going to have its lower end. It's going to have its higher end. The accordion stretch, as I call it, is going to widen. There'll be a lot more products under $10 and more products over $60, $70, $80, $100, right? So we're going to have this big stretch between a gap in pricing, right? There'll be 80% of the market will be under $10, and I promise you this. And there will be indoor under $10 as well.
We're talking eighths for $10?
Yeah. I mean, it's on our shelves now.
Yeah.
We have $8 eighths.
Right. Are these
right now
outdoor?
It's outdoor.
Yeah.
Greenhouse, hoop house.
Well, there's great outdoor weed that people
Absolutely.
undervalue.
Absolutely. And it's undervalued, and that product's only going to get better.
Yeah.
With more technology. But there is the indoor boutique craft cannabis, and what we're seeing is if it's really good, it's just going to go for more. Obviously, there's branding and packaging, and there's a whole lifestyle behind the cannabis brands, and a few brands are capitalizing on that right now, and that's going to continue, right? That's going to happen. Branding, marketing, that's a whole another beast, right? There are experts in marketing, there are experts in branding, and then there are people who brand themselves incredibly well. That's going to continue to happen, and they're going to bring that value to their product. Will that be a majority of the products sold? Absolutely not, right? I would say it's going to be about 5% of the products sold. It'll probably be 20% of the revenue. But the bulk of the product consumed in the next 5 years will be under $10.
Yeah. And what outdoor farms do you carry right now?
Oh, let's get somebody else from the team to kind of put that out there. But no, I know some of the brands. We work with some smaller farmers actually who some of our cheap estates are smaller farmers. Their brands not too many people know about. Yeah. But we know the farm. Family owned a few of the farms. We have a brand, Tipsy. Husband, wife, son. Yeah. They package, they distribute, they grow. Right. And they have an affordable product. And we love supporting them, and we love them on the shelves, and our customers love the $8 8. We carry, a lot of the companies from the Central Coast.
Mendocino.
Mendocino. Unfortunately, the Northern California brands are struggling right now. Yeah. They're having a hard time coming to market. I think the distance has a little bit to play with it. If you are a brand distributing out of Mendocino or Humboldt, and there's a $3,000 order from a retailer in Los Angeles, that drive down and the drive back up is a difficult one, right?
So we're talking Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo?
Santa Barbara County is dominating the greenhouse market. Glass House is there, but outside of Glass House, there's dozens of other greenhouse and hoop house cultivators that are providing an affordable product to the consumer. And some are doing very well. I think Marijuana Business Journal, I buy the report every year. My partner's like, you pay $120 for a report? I'm like, yes. I pay $120 or $150 for this report. And they break down a lot of the economics. Yes, they break down a lot of the economics year by year. And I think the 2022 report for the previous year broke down all the brands and the market share they had. And California had over 60 brands that had 50% of the market share. That doesn't happen in most industries. Usually the top 50, 60% is a handful of people. Yeah. So we have 50, 60 companies that are doing fairly well. Unfortunately, there's 10,000 licensees. So there's a lot of guys that are not doing that well, or they're either have the license to cover up whatever else the diversion of what they're doing, which is another big thing happening in the industry. But there are good operators that run a good business, and we try to work with those companies, right? They're on point, do what they say they're going to do, show up on time. A lot of that stuff matters. Stand behind their product, are consistent, don't do the bait and switch on you. And so that's kind of the few things we look for when we're collaborating with or working with brands and putting them on the shelves.
Last question. What do you think about federal legalization? Would you be in favor of it, and do you think it's going to happen?
It's definitely going to happen. Is it going to happen with President Biden? I don't think so. I think he's got a lot of other issues. I think deep down, he's not pro cannabis, so I don't see him making that a priority.
Right.
Depending on who wins the next election, if it's a Democrat or Republican, either way, I think we're doomed. Because neither seem to have an appetite for it. I don't think it's high on the agenda. I think the more important decision is going to be who's in the Senate and who's in control of the Senate. This whole 50-50, I think where we're at now, this lame duck stuff is not going to push the cannabis agenda.
Yeah.
I am for federal legalization.
Which would mean that you could have LA cannabis in New York or wherever.
Right. So Californians, legalization is a positive. I think there's a lot of things that'll come with it. Obviously, there are some cons.
Like large corporations.
The larger players will come in and
trying to dominate.
They will dominate.
Yeah.
They will dominate that 80% for sure. It will happen. Maybe not overnight, but it will happen. It happened in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It'll happen here. But good businesses will come out of that as well. And California will probably be the biggest winner.
Yeah.
As far as cultivation goes and brands go. California wine is some of the most highly prized wine in the world. California cannabis will be some of the most prized cannabis in the world. Does that play into the business plan of some of the bigger cannabis companies now? No. There's been they actually exposed some of the bigger companies and how they've been trying to stop federal legalization because it would affect a lot of their investments in some of these limited license markets. They have millions of dollars of infrastructure.
Would get rid of their monopolies or...
Right. So even if federal legalization
dominance
happens, I think interstate commerce is going to be a whole nother battle that I don't see opening up for a long time if the big players have their way with the industry, which they usually end up having their way. So I'm for it. I'm for interstate commerce. I think California will benefit tremendously from it. I think the nation will as well. I think some of the product grown in Colorado and Massachusetts and Connecticut and some of these states are horrible. I mean, horrible product.
Yeah. I saw some good herb from Michigan, though, recently.
Right. Well, the outside environment affects a lot of the indoor environment as well.
Yeah.
Because now you have to go above and beyond to control the indoor environment. If you have like 70% humidity outside,
you're going to have
to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Our weather obviously pays to our favor here.
Yeah.
So there's some areas that cannabis will just never grow again. Will cannabis manufacturing happen in California? No, it's going to happen where it happens, right? Like Budweiser doesn't like transport beer across the country. They brew their own beer wherever they need to brew it.
Right.
The raw bulk product will come from a couple of states. California, Oregon has really big yields in the summer. They have 15-pound trees.
Yeah.
Florida will have one nice harvest of high-yielding product once a year. So maybe a little product grown in Florida, a little product grown in Oregon, a lot of product grown in California as far as outdoor. There'll be a bunch of indoor boutique branded California lifestyle brands that'll be sold across the country. Definitely pro legalization. I would support it. There's a lot of benefits to the industry. There's the federal tax issue that the industry deals with. There is the banking that the industry deals with. We pay thousands of dollars a month for our banking compliance.
You have no bank to deal with, right?
We have a bank, but it's very expensive. And
just one bank?
We bank with East West Bank. So they are cannabis friendly, but they charge us, oh God, I don't even want to say what they charge us. It's
Right.
Some people's jaws will hit the floor. But
didn't Walt Disney start his own bank to get Disneyland built? I read that somewhere recently. Maybe the cannabis industry should think of that.
Yeah, there are hurdles. There are credit unions that people bank with as well. But they have to follow the Cole memo, which are the guidelines for banking and legal cannabis operations, state by state. So for banks, they have to go through a lot of compliance when they bank with cannabis. So your Bank of America, your Wells Fargo, for a $50 a month account cannot verify that you're legal and compliant.
Right.
Our bank, they actually get our POS reports and our metric reports every month. They audit our books every quarter.
Oh, wow.
So they have to pay people to audit us so that when they get audited by the Department of Justice or whoever the banking industry is regulated by. So they have to make sure that we're compliant so that they stay compliant. So it's thousands of dollars a month to stay compliant with banking.
Wow. Well, good luck on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Armen, thank you very much for coming down, and this has been great.
Absolutely.
Our fourth Cali High interview with LA Cannabis.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. And
I'll have to come out and see those bags of soil.
Yeah, I'll send you videos.
Okay.
Absolutely, and then I brought some goodies here for you.
All right.
To do some sampling, and you'll let us know what you think.
All righty. That what we'll do?
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
you have
man.
a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks.
To the church of Cali High, Cali High, Cali High.
You've been listening to Cali High episode 67, LA Cannabis Catching Up with Armen. Special thanks to our guest, Armen Paronyan. I'm your host, Chenzo Nico, also known as Vince Nicoletti. LA Cannabis can be found on Instagram at LACC Official, at HPRLA, and at LA Cannabis Co. Crenshaw. LA Cannabis is on the web at lacannabisco.com. Physical locations in Los Angeles, 3791 2nd Street, LA 90018. In Inglewood, 5993 St. Andrews Place, LA 90047. On La Brea, 1603 South La Brea Avenue, LA 90019. Cali High's theme, written and recorded by Vince Nicoletti, Jordan Webb, and Namir Blade. Cali High podcast and theme are copywritten, and the logo is trademarked. Donate to Cali High at patreon.com/CaliHighLA. Like, follow, and subscribe to Cali High on YouTube, and we're on YouTube at Cali High 8901. Email us with any questions to CaliHighPodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Cali High LA. On all podcast platforms and audio. Cali High is a Chenzo Nico production. Stay safe and be blessed.